It was supposed to be an exchange program. A chance to explore a new world, meet new people, and learn about a different culture. But nothing about it was going to be as simple as it seemed. James, a young and adventurous college student, had always been fascinated by the stars. The idea of living with an alien roommate, even for just a year, seemed like a dream come true. He never imagined that signing up for the Vulpine Exchange Program would change his life in ways he couldn't even begin to predict. The program promised to connect humans with alien species, to encourage understanding and cooperation. Vulpine were a race of beings known for their advanced technology and beauty, their humanoid forms enhanced by sharp features and animal-like traits. James had read about them in books and seen them in documentaries, but nothing prepared him for actually meeting one. And he had no idea that his roommate, a Vulpine female named Leora, would become the center of a conflict neither of them could have anticipated. James arrived at the exchange center, filled with excitement and nervous energy. His bags were packed with the usual items any young person would bring: clothes, books, a few personal items, but his mind was buzzing with questions about his new life. How would things be different? Would Leora be friendly? What did the Vulpine think of humans? As he walked down the long corridor leading to his assigned room, he noticed the walls adorned with images of different alien species, all participating in the exchange. But when he reached his door, he froze for a moment. The door was already slightly open, and the soft hum of the room's artificial lighting could be heard. Stepping in cautiously, James looked around. Leora stood by the window, gazing out at the city skyline, her features striking in the dim light. She had long silvery hair that shimmered as it cascaded down her back, and fox-like ears that twitched slightly as if sensing his presence. Her eyes, large and golden, seemed to glow in the low light. She turned when she heard him enter, her expression unreadable. "Hello," James said, his voice a bit shakier than he had intended. Leora smiled, and it was as though the entire room brightened. "Welcome, James. I hope your journey was pleasant." The way she spoke, her voice melodic and calming, eased James' nerves. But there was something else there too, a sense of mystery. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but he felt as though he was standing at the edge of something bigger than both of them. Over the next few days, James and Leora began to settle into their routine. She was polite, kind, and willing to share stories of her people and their advanced civilization. But something strange started happening. James noticed Leora's behavior shifting. At first, he thought it was just his imagination, but as days passed, it became clear. She seemed to be getting closer to him. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, Leora asked a question that made James pause. "James," she said softly, her golden eyes locking with his, "have you ever considered what it would be like to be with someone different from you? To share more than just a space, but your thoughts and your heart?" James blinked, unsure of how to respond. Was she talking about the exchange program? Or was she referring to something more personal? His heart raced and he had a sudden sense of unease. I don't know what you mean," he stammered, feeling awkward. Leora didn't seem offended. Instead, she leaned in slightly, her eyes still focused on him. "You'll understand in time, James," she said, quietly, as if speaking the truth only she knew. "I'm different from you, yes, but I see things in you. Things that are important." That was when the first ripple of tension in their relationship began. James felt a strange pull, like he was being drawn into something he didn't fully understand. Leora's words haunted him for days, and with each passing moment, the lines between friendship and something more blurred. What was she trying to say? Was there a deeper connection between them, one that neither of them had planned for? But it wasn't just Leora's feelings that were shifting. James couldn't deny the growing attraction he felt toward her, and as time went on, the walls he had carefully built around himself began to crumble. The simple exchange program had turned into something far more complex, something that neither of them had expected. It didn't take long before James began to notice changes in Leora that went beyond the surface. Her moods were unpredictable, and sometimes there were strange moments when she would stare at him with an intensity that made him uneasy. She was always there, her presence lingering in ways he couldn't fully explain. It was as though she was trying to read him, understand him on a deeper level. Soon, James realized something far more dangerous was at play. The Vulpine were not just an advanced alien species. They had their own hidden agendas, and not all of them were peaceful. Leora's growing affection for him wasn't just personal. It was tied to something far bigger, something he wasn't prepared for. As the days passed, he started to understand that the exchange program was only the beginning. He had been caught in the middle of a struggle that could change everything, and he had no idea how deep the war really ran. And the war wasn't just on the battlefield, it was a war of the heart. One James never expected he would have to fight. Days passed, and the tension between James and Leora only grew. He had tried to keep things casual, tried to keep things normal, but it was impossible. Every time they spoke, every time they looked at each other, something shifted. And as much as he tried to ignore it, James couldn't help but feel like something deeper was unfolding between them. But what? It wasn't until one evening, when the sun began to set and the lights of the city twinkled in the distance, that James started to see the cracks in the facade. Leora had been acting strange. For the past few days, distant one moment, intense the next. Her usual calm and collected demeanor had been replaced by an unsettling sense of urgency, and James couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something from him. That night, as they sat down for dinner, Leora's voice was softer than usual. "James," she began, her golden eyes flickering as they met his, "there's something you need to know. Something I should have told you much sooner." James felt his heart race. The words hung in the air, heavy and loaded. What was she going to say? What had she been hiding? "I'm not here just because of the exchange program," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "My mission here, it's more complicated than you think." James's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice shaky. Leora took a deep breath before continuing, her gaze shifting to the city outside the window. "The Vulpine. We are not just a peaceful race. We've been involved in conflicts across galaxies, often in the shadows, unnoticed by the rest of the universe. The exchange program ... It was meant to bring us closer to your people, to learn about you. But that's not the only reason." James leaned forward, his pulse quickening. "What are you saying? What's really going on?" Leora's eyes met his, her expression serious. "There are factions within the Vulpine, James. Some want peace, others want control. My mission is to gather information that could change everything for both of our species." James's mind was racing. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Was Leora a spy? Had she been using him to get information this whole time? He wanted to believe her, to trust her, but the pieces weren't fitting together. "But why tell me this now? Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Leora's eyes softened, and for a moment, she looked vulnerable, almost human. "Because I didn't expect to care about you," she admitted. "I thought I could keep things professional, keep my distance. But the more time I spent with you, the harder it became. I don't want to be a part of this war, James. I don't want to hurt you, but I'm caught in something much bigger than either of us." James was silent for a long moment, trying to process what she had just revealed. His thoughts were jumbled, confused. He couldn't deny that something about her seemed genuine, that the connection between them was real. But there were still so many questions, so many unknowns. And the more he thought about it, the more he realized that the Vulpine were far from the peaceful advanced species he had imagined. Suddenly, Leora stood up, her posture tense. "They're coming," she said quietly. "They know I've been Talking to you, they'll be here soon. We need to leave, now. James's heart skipped a beat. Who's coming? Who knows about us? Those who want control, she replied. The ones who will stop at nothing to get what they want. They won't hesitate to use you to get to me. Before James could say anything else, Leora grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the door. We don't have much time. We need to go now. James was frozen for a moment, his mind still reeling from the shock of her confession. This wasn't what he had signed up for. He had come to the Vulpine Exchange Program looking for adventure, but he hadn't expected this secret war, this danger, these feelings he didn't understand. But Leora was pulling him along, and as much as he wanted to fight the confusion in his head, he knew he couldn't let her go alone. He didn't know what was happening or who was after them, but one thing was clear. His life had changed forever, and he was in the middle of something far more dangerous than he could ever have imagined. As they ran down the hall, James couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning, that whatever was coming for them would change everything, not just for him, but for the entire universe. And he wasn't sure if he was ready for what lay ahead. The only thing he knew was that his connection with Leora was real. And if he was going to survive what was coming, he would have to trust her completely, no matter how much it terrified him. The hallways of the exchange center were eerily silent as James and Leora sprinted through the narrow corridors. The glow of artificial lighting flickered overhead, casting long stretching shadows that seemed to chase them as they moved. Leora's grip on his hand was firm, and she pulled him forward with an urgency that James had never seen before. She was always calm, always collected, but now there was a desperation in her eyes, a fear that made James's heart pound in his chest. Who's coming for us? He gasped, trying to keep up with her pace. Who are they? Leora didn't answer. Immediately, her eyes darting from side to side as though watching for any signs of movement. She only slowed down when they reached a hidden door at the end of the corridor. She glanced over her shoulder, her golden eyes sharp with caution. They're called the Vulpine Order, Leora explained in a low, hurried voice. A faction within our race. They believe in domination, not peace. They'll stop at nothing to control the galaxy, and they've been hunting me ever since I arrived here. I was supposed to keep a low profile, gather information, but things changed. They don't care about the program. They care about what? I know. And now they think you have it too. James's stomach twisted with unease. This was far beyond what he had imagined. What kind of war was Leora caught in? He had thought this whole exchange program was about diplomacy, about learning from each other. But now it seemed like he had been thrust into the middle of an intergalactic power struggle. He didn't know who to trust anymore. Leora pressed a few buttons on the wall next to the door, and with a soft hiss, it slid open to reveal a dark, narrow stairwell. She motioned for James to follow her, and he did, his mind racing with questions. How had he gotten mixed up in this? Was it all a lie from the start? Once inside, Leora locked the door behind them, and they descended into the unknown depths of the building. The air was thick with tension, and the deeper they went, the more oppressive it felt. The dim light from their emergency torches flickered as they moved silently through the hidden underground passageways. As they walked, James couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. His instincts told him that danger was closing in on them fast. We need to get to the shuttle bay, Leora murmured, breaking the silence. It's our only chance to leave the planet before they find us. Shuttle bay? James echoed, his mind still reeling from everything he had learned. What about the program? What about the humans? Leora stopped and turned to face him, her expression serious. There's no time for the program anymore. The humans don't know about the real reason I'm here. The Vulpine Order will come for you too, if they think you're involved. You need to trust me now, James. This is bigger than both of us. The urgency in her voice was enough to shake him from his shock. He knew she was right. If they didn't leave now, there was no telling what the order would do. But leaving meant abandoning everything he had known. It meant walking away from the life he had hoped to build. Still, as he looked into Leora's eyes, he felt a strange connection, a bond he couldn't explain. Despite the fear, despite the confusion, he knew he had to follow her. There was no turning back now. They continued through the labyrinth of tunnels, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. Every now and then, they would stop, listening for sounds of movement from behind. But the longer they moved, the more certain James became that they weren't just running from the order, they were running from something even darker, something more dangerous. And then, as they neared the final tunnel leading to the shuttle bay, James heard it, the soft mechanical hum of footsteps approaching. They were close. Leora's face hardened. "We have to move faster. They found us." James's pulse quickened as he followed her down the final stretch of the tunnel. His mind raced as he tried to piece everything together. Why had the Vulpine Order targeted Leora? What did she know that was so important? And more importantly, what did the Order want with him? Just as they reached the shuttle bay, a blast of energy struck the wall beside them, sending debris flying through the air. James ducked instinctively, his heart pounding in his chest. The Vulpine Order was here. Leora spun around, her face filled with determination. "Get to the shuttle, James." "Go," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. James didn't hesitate. He ran toward the shuttle, heart racing. He didn't know how long they could last, how far they could run. But he knew one thing for sure, they couldn't afford to stop. Behind him, he could hear the soldiers of the Vulpine Order closing in. Their footsteps were heavy, their weapons powered up and ready for a fight. James could feel the tension building, the pressure mounting as he scrambled into the shuttle. Leora was already at the controls, her fingers moving quickly as she powered up the ship's engines. "We don't have much time," Leora called out, her voice strained. "They'll be here any second." James didn't know how she managed to stay so calm under pressure, but he admired her for it. He sat down beside her, gripping the armrests tightly as the shuttle began to rise into the air. As the shuttle shot into the sky, James glanced out of the window. Below him, the exchange center was nothing more than a distant speck, the city sprawling beneath them. But even though they were leaving the chaos behind, James knew that their fight was far from over. The Vulpine Order was still out there, and they weren't going to stop until they got what they wanted. And as the shuttle broke through the atmosphere and into space, James realized that everything had changed. The peaceful life he had imagined was gone, replaced by a new reality, one that was filled with danger, intrigue, and a bond with a mysterious alien that he couldn't explain. The chase had only just begun. The shuttle broke through the atmosphere, leaving the planet's surface far behind. As James gazed out the window, the sprawling city he had once admired shrank into a distant blur, and the vastness of space stretched out before him, cold and endless. The steady hum of the shuttle's engines was the only sound that filled the cabin, and the silence felt heavy. Leora's hands moved quickly over the control panel, her focus unshakable. James sat next to her, his mind racing. What had they just escaped from? The Vulpine Order was hunting them, and they were now fugitives, fleeing into the unknown. Everything he thought he knew about the program, about Leora, had been shattered. In an instant, what did she really know? And what was the true cost of their escape? "We're not safe yet," Leora's voice broke through his thoughts, her eyes scanning the dark expanse of space. "The Order won't stop until they have us, James. They'll track us down, no matter where we go. And they won't care who gets hurt along the way." James nodded, his throat tight. "I don't understand. Why are they after you? What do you know that's so important?" Leora let out a heavy sigh, her golden eyes reflecting a deep sadness. "It's not just me. It's the information I've gathered. The Vulpine Order has been working in the shadows for decades, pushing us toward war with other species, trying to dominate the galaxy. But the Order is divided. There's a faction led by someone very powerful that wants to use this information to fuel their plans for conquest. And they believe that I know the key to bringing it all together. James absorbed her words, but confusion still gnawed at him. You're telling me the Order is planning a war? A war that involves humans? Leora nodded. Yes, but it's more than just a war. The Order wants to control the resources of the galaxy, to reshape entire civilizations to their will. And the worst part? They have the means to do it. The technology they've developed is far beyond anything you can imagine. And they'll use it against anyone who stands in their way. James's stomach tightened. He had never signed up for any of this. When he first heard about the exchange program, he had thought it would be a chance to learn about an advanced, peaceful species. Instead, he was trapped in the middle of an intergalactic conspiracy, running from a ruthless alien faction with a dangerous agenda. And to make matters worse, Leora, the very person he had started to trust, was at the center of it all. You said there's a faction. Is there a way to stop them? James asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Leora's eyes softened, but her expression remained resolute. There are people who oppose the Order, but they are few. The Vulpine are not unified, and that's the only thing that might give us a chance. But it won't be easy. The Order is powerful. They have allies, and their reach extends far beyond this galaxy. James felt a chill run down his spine. What had he gotten himself into? He had signed up for a year of cultural exchange, and now he was a fugitive on the run, caught up in a battle that could change the fate of the entire galaxy. He didn't know how to stop the Order or how to help Leora, but one thing was clear. He couldn't turn back now. How do we fight back? He asked, determined to find a way out of this nightmare. Leora glanced at him, her golden eyes filled with both determination and a hint of fear. We find the people who oppose the Order. We find the truth. And we expose them before they can finish what they started. James swallowed hard, the weight of her words settling over him. It was a dangerous mission, one that could get them both killed. But there was no other choice. They couldn't just run forever. The Order wouldn't rest until they had what they wanted, and if Leora was right, what they wanted could destroy everything. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the shuttle and the endless void of space were the only sounds in the cabin. James looked at Leora, her face illuminated by the faint glow of the control panel, and something inside him shifted. Despite the danger, despite the uncertainty of their situation, he knew he couldn't walk away. Not from her. Not from this. We'll do it together, James said finally, his voice steady. We'll find a way to stop them. Leora's lips curled into a small, grateful smile, but there was a sadness in her eyes that James couldn't ignore. You don't know what you're getting into, James. The Order is ruthless. They won't hesitate to destroy everything you care about. James met her gaze. Maybe not. But I can't stand by and do nothing. I'll fight with you, Leora. We're in this together. She seemed to consider his words for a moment before nodding. Then we have a long journey ahead of us. Suddenly, the shuttle jolted, and James was thrown forward, his seatbelt tightening around him. The lights flickered as the shuttle shook, and the unmistakable sound of blaster fire rang out from the rear of the ship. Leora's hand slammed down on the control panel as she quickly adjusted the ship's trajectory. They've found us, she shouted. Hold on, James. Through the viewports, James could see a fleet of ships emerging from the darkness, their sleek, menacing forms cutting through the void. The Vulpine Order was closing in on them, and there was no escape. The fight had begun. Leora's hands flew over the controls, and the shuttle veered sharply to the side, narrowly dodging another blast. The engines roared as she pushed the shuttle to its limits, trying to outrun their pursuers. But the Order wasn't going to let them go that easily. We need to lose them, Leora said through gritted teeth, her eyes focused on the fleet behind. Them. We can't outrun them in open space. We need to find a way to hide. James's heart raced as the shuttle rocked again. How do we do that? We can't just disappear. Leora's gaze flickered to a small dark asteroid field ahead. We'll use the asteroids. It's our only chance. Without hesitation, she pulled the shuttle into a sharp turn, diving toward the jagged rocks ahead. The shuttle was forced into a wild maneuver, weaving between the towering asteroids as the Order's ships followed, relentless in their pursuit. Chase had become a deadly game, and James wasn't sure if they would make it out alive. But one thing was clear. They weren't going down without a fight. And in that moment, he realized that this was no longer about a simple exchange program. It was about survival. And no matter what happened next, he was in this fight with Leora together. For better or worse, the shuttle's engine screamed as it rocketed through the asteroid field, narrowly dodging the massive jagged rocks that seemed to appear out of nowhere. James's heart was pounding in his chest, his hands gripping the armrest so tightly his knuckles ached. Every time the shuttle jerked to avoid a collision, he felt his stomach lurch, and the rush of fear washed over him. Behind them, the fleet of Vulpine Order ships was relentless. Their blasters lit up the dark void, firing off sharp bursts of energy that exploded against the asteroids with violent flashes. The shuttle rocked with each near miss, the hull groaning as it absorbed the strain. Leora's face was set with a determined focus, her eyes scanning the asteroid field ahead, calculating their every move. James had never seen her like this before, so fierce, so unyielding. She was the one in control now, and he had no choice but to trust her with everything. We need to get to the asteroid's dark side, Leora said through gritted teeth, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. It'll hide us long enough to regroup, but we have to be quick. James nodded, trying to push aside his fear. How much time do we have? Leora didn't answer right away. Instead, she yanked the shuttle into another sharp turn, narrowly missing a cluster of asteroids that appeared too close for comfort. Her hands flew over the controls, guiding the ship with skill and precision. Not much. The Order will scan this field, and they'll figure out where we're hiding. The dark side of the asteroid was their only hope, a place where shadows would cloak their movements. If they could get there before the Order found them, they might stand a chance of escaping, even if only for a little while. But as the minutes passed, the distance between them and the Vulpine ships shrank. The Order's ships were faster, better equipped, and far more powerful than their shuttle. It was a race against time, and right now, the odds were against them. Hold on, Leora shouted, jerking the shuttle into a dive as a barrage of enemy fire zipped past them. James's stomach lurched as they plummeted into a narrow gap between two massive asteroids, the hull groaning under the pressure. The moment they dove into the shadows, the fire from the Order's ships stopped. The ships hovered above the asteroid field, waiting, searching for the slightest sign of movement. The shuttle was barely visible in the dark recesses of the asteroids. Shadow, hidden among the jagged rock formations. For a brief moment, everything was quiet, too quiet. Leora slowed the shuttle, her breathing shallow as she brought the ship to a halt behind a large asteroid. The only sounds in the cabin were the hum of the ship's systems and their labored breaths. We need to stay here for a while, Leora said, her voice a whisper now, as if the silence around them demanded it. Let them think we've escaped into deep space. We'll take the opportunity to figure out our next move. James nodded, trying to steady his breath. He was shaken, both from the chase and the realization of how close they had come to being caught. How long do you think we can stay here? Leora glanced at the control panel, her brow furrowed as she scanned the readings. Not long. They'll be running scans soon, trying to find our heat signature. We need to find a way to mask it, or better yet, get out of this field entirely, but it's risky. James turned his gaze back to the window, watching as the dark asteroid field stretched out before them. It looked peaceful from here, but he knew better now. The silence was deceptive. He could feel the weight of the danger pressing down on him, the uncertainty of their situation hanging in the air. Leora's fingers moved quickly over the control panel, typing in commands that James didn't understand. You mentioned there were others who opposed the order. Do you think we could reach them? Maybe they can help us, he suggested, trying to focus on the bigger picture. Leora paused, her expression distant. The opposition is scattered, James. Some of them work in the shadows. Some of them are hiding in remote sectors of the galaxy. Finding them will be just as dangerous as outrunning the order. But there's one group, a resistance faction called the Freeborn. They've been active against the order for years, but they're hard to find. If we can locate them, we might have a chance. James frowned. And how do we find them? Leora hesitated. I have a contact, a trusted ally who can help. But getting to him, it's going to be dangerous. The order has eyes everywhere, and they'll be watching every major jump point and sector. We'll have to travel through some of the most hostile regions of space to even get close. James's mind raced. He had no idea what kind of space the Resistance operated in, or what dangers lay ahead. But the thought of facing the Vulpine Order without any backup was even worse. Do we have a choice? He asked. No, Leora replied flatly. We have no choice but to trust each other and get to this contact. If we don't, the Order will eventually catch up with us, and they'll finish what they started. For a moment, they both sat in the quiet of the shuttle, the gravity of their situation settling over them. The shuttle was still hidden in the bay. Shadows of the asteroid, but that was no guarantee they would be safe for long. The Order was relentless, and the further they went into the unknown, the more perilous their journey would become. Leora shifted in her seat, adjusting the controls. I'll get us out of here, but we need to move quickly. The longer we stay, the more likely we are to be detected. We have to jump to the next sector and hope we're not followed. James turned to her, his resolve strengthening. I'm with you, Leora. Let's do this. She looked at him for a long moment, as if measuring his sincerity, before nodding. All right. Hold on tight. With a sudden burst of speed, the shuttle shot out of the asteroid field, the dark void of space opening up before them. The engines roared to life, and Leora expertly navigated the ship through the dangerous expanse of space, avoiding debris and enemy ships as they made their way to the jump point. James didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was clear: there was no turning back now. They were on a path that led to something bigger than either of them could have imagined. The fight against the Vulpine Order had only just begun. And whether they survived or not, James knew that his life would never be the same. The unknown stretches of space awaited them, and as they entered the void, James held on to one simple thought: they were in this together. And whatever came next, they would face it as one. The shuttle accelerated, its engines roaring as they shot through the void of space. The asteroid field was far behind them now, and the stars stretched out like an endless ocean. Despite the vastness of the galaxy surrounding them, James couldn't shake the sense of looming danger. Every shadow, every flicker of light from distant stars made him uneasy. The Order could be anywhere, watching, waiting. Leora was calm, focused as ever, her eyes locked on the navigation console. The smooth hum of the shuttle's engines was the only sound filling the cabin, but James could sense the tension building in the air. They were on the run, and every second they spent in open space was another second they risked being detected. We're approaching the jump point, Leora said, her voice steady but tight. Once we jump, we'll be in uncharted space. The Freeborn operates in a remote region, far from any major routes. But that also means we're cutting ourselves off from any quick escape. If the order follows us, we'll be stuck with no way out. James nodded, his heart pounding. The unknown lay ahead, but there was no turning back now. He couldn't just hide forever. He had to help Leora. He had to stop the Vulpine order before they got what they wanted. Leora continued to adjust the ship's controls. We're jumping. In 3.2.1. With a sudden jolt, the stars outside the shuttle's viewports blurred, stretching into streaks of light as they entered the jump tunnel. The sensation was disorienting, like being pulled through a vortex. James gripped his seat, stomach flipping as the shuttle hurtled through the fabric of space. The jump tunnel closed behind them, and the stars returned to their natural form, vast and scattered across the endless black. We're in uncharted space, Leora said, her voice a little more relaxed now that they had made the jump. But this sector is dangerous. There are hostile ships that patrol the area, mercenaries, pirates, and worse. We need to be careful. James swallowed hard. He had no idea what kind of danger they would face, but he knew it wouldn't be easy. Everything about this journey was unknown. The Freeborn, this mysterious resistance group, was their only hope. But where were they? And how would they know who to trust? We'll need to make contact with the Freeborn in the next system, Leora continued, scanning the display. There's a small outpost there. I'm hoping we can get in without attracting attention. James glanced at the screen, his eyes tracing the distant stars. His mind wandered back to the conversations they had shared, how she had explained the Vulpine Order's dark motives, how she had told him of their ruthless quest for domination. He understood now that this wasn't just about Leora's mission. It was about the fate of the galaxy. The Order's plans weren't just for conquest. They sought total control. And if they succeeded, entire civilizations would be enslaved. How do we find the Freeborn in the next system? James asked. How will? We know who they are. Leora's lips tightened slightly, as if she were weighing her next words. I have a signal, an encrypted channel we can use to communicate with them. It's a dead drop, a method of contact known only to a few trusted individuals. But even so, there's no guarantee we'll be safe once we make contact. The Order has spies everywhere. James felt his heart skip. The paranoia, the uncertainty, it was all starting to feel like a nightmare he couldn't wake from. But in a way, it was also the only reality he knew now. He didn't know how he had gone from being a regular college student to being in the middle of a galactic war, but here he was. The shuttle glided smoothly through space, the stars now a blur as they approached the next system. Leora tapped a few keys on the console, and a low rhythmic hum filled the cabin as the ship prepared for its next jump. Are you ready? Leora asked, glancing at him. James swallowed. I guess we have no choice. Leora nodded, her eyes focused ahead. Once we jump, we need to be quick. The outpost won't be on any official star maps. It's hidden from any standard scans. But if we don't reach it in time, the Order could catch up with us. We don't have much room for error. James felt a cold knot in his stomach as the shuttle's jump engines powered up. Everything felt like a blur, like a dangerous game they were both being forced to play. He had no idea what the future held, but one thing was certain. Every decision they made now could be their last. There was no way out except forward. The shuttle jolted again, and the stars outside twisted into bright lines as they jumped once more. The familiar sensation of traveling through the tunnel hit James like a wave, and he braced himself, gripping the seat tighter. The second jump was even more disorienting than the first, but just as before, the stars soon returned to their natural form, a peaceful sea of light in the distance. We're here, Leora said, her voice steady, but we need to be careful. The system we're entering is highly regulated. Pirates, smugglers, mercenaries, there are all sorts of people here who could either help or hinder us. We need to be cautious. James peered out the window, scanning the new star system. The planets here were small, rocky, and distant, with little to suggest any signs of life. But then he saw a small, seemingly unremarkable moon orbiting one of the planets. It was there that Leora set her course. "That's the outpost," Leora said, her finger hovering over the control panel. "We'll land, make contact, and then get out as quickly as possible." The shuttle's engines hummed quietly as it descended toward the moon's surface. James watched in silence as the barren, rocky terrain came into view. A hidden base, built into the moon's natural caves, stood at the edge of a jagged cliff, camouflaged against the desolate landscape. It was the perfect hideout, far from prying eyes, and possibly their only hope. "Once we land, we'll need to go in quietly," Leora instructed. "There's no time to waste." As the shuttle touched down on the cold, lifeless surface, James's heart began to race again. They were about to meet the Freeborn, the resistance group that could be the key to stopping the Vulpine Order. But with every step, they moved deeper into unknown territory, deeper into enemy lines. The danger was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. The shuttle settled softly onto the rocky surface of the moon, the engines humming down into silence. James could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy, as Leora powered down the systems. For a moment, everything was still too still. The barren landscape outside stretched endlessly, broken only by jagged mountains and deep craters, a world that felt as isolated and cold as their situation. "Ready?" Leora's voice broke the silence, calm but with an edge of urgency. James nodded, his stomach tight. They were here. This was the last chance they had to turn the tide, to find the resistance and stop the Vulpine Order before it was too late. But something about this place felt off. The moon's surface seemed to hold a secret, a quiet tension as if the shadows themselves were watching them. "Let's go," Leora said, her tone leaving no room for hesitation. They gathered their belongings quickly and moved toward the airlock. The shuttle door slid open with a hiss, revealing the desolate, gray terrain outside. The air was thin but breathable. Leora's sharp eyes scanned the horizon before she motioned for James to follow. The resistance outpost wasn't far hidden in a series of caves beneath the moon's surface, a place that no one would ever think to look. It was a perfect hideout, but also a perfect trap for anyone who didn't know its location. Leora had given him little information, just enough to trust that they were headed in the right direction. There was no way of knowing who to trust here, but they had no choice. As they approached the entrance to the outpost, a sudden noise caused both of them to freeze. Footsteps echoed from the shadows ahead, quick and purposeful. "Get down," Leora whispered, pulling James behind a large rock formation. They crouched low, hearts pounding. The sounds grew louder, and then a figure emerged from the darkness. A man, human, but his clothes were mismatched, as if he had been living in the wild for months. His face was rugged, eyes wary, but his expression softened when he saw them. "You're not supposed to be here," the man said, his voice hoarse. His hand rested on the blaster at his side, but he didn't seem ready to draw it. The order's already sniffing around. "You two must be desperate." Leora stepped forward slowly, her posture defensive. "We need to speak with the Freeborn. We have urgent information. The Order is coming for us." The man eyed them both suspiciously, then nodded. "Follow me." He turned and began walking, motioning for them to stay low and stay quiet. James felt a lump form in his throat. Every step, every breath, felt like they were walking closer to an unknown fate. Were the Freeborn really who they claimed to be? Or was this some kind of trap set by the Vulpine Order? The man led them through a narrow passage, deep into the cave system. The walls were lined with old, faded lights, casting long shadows along the floor. The air was thick with dust and the smell of machinery. This place had been in operation for a long time. James could feel the weight of the secrets it held, The countless lives that had been hidden away from the galaxy's eyes. After what seemed like an eternity of winding tunnels, they reached a large chamber. Inside, a handful of people were busy at work, tapping at consoles, whispering among themselves and monitoring various holographic maps of the galaxy. At the center of the room was a large table, cluttered with datapads and communication devices. Man who had led them in walked up to a tall figure standing near the table. "They're here," he said simply. The figure turned, and James's breath caught. She was taller than most humans, with striking features and sharp, angular eyes that glowed with an eerie blue hue. She was Vulpine, but she didn't have the cold, calculating demeanor of the Order. There was something different about her, something familiar, even comforting. Leora stepped forward, her face tense. "You're the leader of the Freeborn?" The woman nodded slowly. "I am, and you must be Leora." She looked at James next, her eyes assessing him with a careful, calculated gaze. "And you're the human who's been caught in all of this?" James nodded, unsure of what to say. The weight of everything he had been through seemed to crash down on him in that moment. He wasn't just some bystander anymore. He was a part of this fight, whether he was ready for it or not. "We've been tracking the Order for years. The years," Freeborn leader said, her voice steady and measured. "We've known for some time that their plans are bigger than any of us realize. But it seems you've gotten more involved than we anticipated." Leora met her gaze. "We need your help. The Order has found us, and they're hunting us down. I have information they need. And if they get it, everything we've worked for will be lost." The leader's eyes narrowed. "You're right. The Order won't stop until they have what they want. But it's not just about information anymore. Leora, the Order has advanced weapons, weapons capable of wiping out entire planets. And they've begun their attack on the outer systems. They're building an army, a force that we can't stop unless we act now." James felt his heart race. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This wasn't just about escaping the Order. The fate of countless innocent lives was in the balance. "We can't let them win," Leora said quietly, her eyes fierce. "We have to stop them, together." The Freeborn leader studied her for a long moment before nodding. "We will help you. But it won't be easy. We have allies, but they are scattered. The Order is already making moves against them." "We'll do whatever it takes," James said, his voice steady. "We have to stop them. I can't let this continue." The leader looked at him with an approving nod, and for the first time since this all started, James felt a sense of purpose. He wasn't just running anymore. He wasn't just hiding. He was part of something bigger, something worth fighting. For and then, the alarms blared. The Order had found them. It all happened so quickly. The chamber erupted into chaos as the Freeborn scrambled to their stations. The leader turned to Leora and James. "This is it. The Order is here. Prepare yourselves." The door to the chamber slammed open, and armed Vulpine soldiers poured in. The Freeborn were ready, and the battle began. James stood beside Leora, his heart pounding in his chest. The weapon's fire lit up the room in flashes of blue and red, the air thick with the sound of blaster shots and shouts. But through it all, one thought kept repeating in his mind. This is the final stand. They were no longer running. They were fighting back, together.